Napa know-how.
The Napa guy knows not to judge a man by his car's multicolor paint job or absence of modern gadgetry. Who cares if it's technically old enough to vote and the windows are powered by the strength of your left arm? Your monthly payment is zero, and it'll stay that way. Because with over 500,000 parts and a little Napa know-how, you can keep anything on the road. She may not be pretty, but she's all yours. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.
This is the Bischoff on Wrestling podcast, featuring former WCW president, WWE Raw general manager, one half of Bischoff Hervey Entertainment, and New York Times bestselling author, Eric Bischoff. Now, here's WrestleZone Radio and 120 Sports' Nick Hausman, and your host, Sports Entertainment's king of controversy, Eric Bischoff.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Episode 8, Bischoff on Wrestling, the podcast. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us at audioboom.com. Do me a favor. Give us that 5-star rating if you think we deserve it. If you don't think we deserve it, tell us why. Leave us a comment. Either way, check us out. And by the way, we have a very, very special show for you tonight. A doubleheader, if you will. Mickey Gall, straight off his UFC 203 win over CM Punk, tag teaming here on Bischoff on Wrestling with none other than Hulk Hogan. And our final chapter, part number 3 of my interview with Hulk Hogan. Nick Hausman, you rocked it on this episode. Thanks for landing Mickey.
Oh, man. Hey, thank you for landing Hulk. I feel like we're just high-fiving and patting each other's butts to start the show here today. Yeah, I mean, it was a team effort here. It is a team effort on Bischoff on Wrestling. And, of course, yeah, huge show. Mickey Gall, Hulk Hogan. And not only that, you're later in the show going to get a little bit of Eric talking about a couple of the big business of professional headlines from the week. And also at the end of the show, as always, we have our hashtag Bischoff on Wrestling mailbag segment. A lot to get into here today, guys, so let's not waste any more time. Before we go any further, though, let's put over our wonderful sponsors here for Bischoff on Wrestling. And leading it off this week is our sponsor who's been here for a couple weeks now, and that is Blue Apron. And, Eric, I know that you love Blue Apron because you love to cook. Isn't that right?
I love to cook. One of the things that we've talked about Blue Apron, and my wife and I do both love it. It comes prepackaged, it's shipped right to your house, fresh ingredients, gourmet food. But the one thing that I haven't talked about is the quantity. This is the kind of a meal, literally almost everything that we've made, that we've received from Blue Apron, we've been able to eat, two days in a row. I mean, you get big portions. So the quality is good. The freshness is great. The convenience is off the charts. And the proportions are really, really great. So even if you're single, man, you can eat for 3 days off one of these meals. I encourage people to try it out. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely, guys. And if you want to get 3 free meals from Blue Apron sent right to your house, absolutely for free, shipping included, all you have to do is go over to blueapron.com and use the promo code EricB. That's right, the promo code EricB, and you get all this great, fresh, wonderful food sent right to your house. And, of course, this week now, we are welcoming our second sponsor to the show. 2 sponsors, Eric, have taken a vested interest here in Bischoff on Wrestling. And again, I know that this is a sponsor that is near and dear to your heart, and that is Dollar Shave Club. Now, you've been with Dollar Shave Club now for a while, right, Eric?
It's been like 2 or 3 years, like right after they first started, because literally, I'm not to get personal, but my beard grows fast and it's thick. And, you're dropping $15, $20, $25 every time you go into the drugstore to buy a pack of razor blades. So when Dollar Shave came out, I was probably one of the first people to sign up for it. And it's such a convenience because, everything you need, you get a big variety of things to choose from, but everything you need comes delivered right to your door like clockwork. And in my case, because I live in 2 different places in the country, I live in Wyoming in the summer and I live in Arizona in the winter, all I need to do is go online. It takes me about 3 minutes to change the shipping address, and boom, I'm done. And stuff shows right up at the door. And it's a lot of great stuff, not just razor blades, but a lot of great men's care stuff. And I really, really enjoy the service. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, guys, he's talking about the blades. You can get the executive blade. You can get Dr. Carver's shave butter, and that helps you just gently glide that blade right over your face to give you the smoothest shave ever. And if you want to join the over 3 million members that love Dollar Shave Club is so confident in the quality of all their products that now you can get your first month of the club for free. And after that, it's just a few bucks a month. You just got to pay shipping. There's no long-term commitment, no hidden fees. There's no reason not to do it. So get yours today over at dollarshaveclub.com/Bischoff. That's right. If you want to support the show, let Dollar Shave Club know you heard about Dollar Shave Club from Bischoff on Wrestling. Go over to dollarshaveclub.com/Bischoff. Mickey, thank you very much for coming on to the show today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy to be here.
So, Mickey, again, I can't thank you enough. I know your life's going to be pretty much upside down. Your schedule's got to be jammed now, coming off that big fight. But for the last, couple days, I've been teasing, from my point of view, why I think CM Punk lost the fight to you. And, my take was, quite frankly, for a guy with no ground game, no takedown defense, no amateur or collegiate wrestling background, no martial arts background, no boxing background, to come blowing across the ring, standing straight up, almost at full speed, towards a guy that's got jiu-jitsu experience and excels at a ground game was a huge mistake. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. That was absolutely a mistake, one that I sort of expected. I expected him to want to come out there feeling like he has something to prove on the show. I'm a tough fighter. I can bang. And just to come in hot, come in over aggressive, and get put on his butt.
He didn't, well, of course, the fight didn't last long enough to see if he has developed, and I don't mean this derisively, I do respect CM Punk for having the guts to step into a game that he has no background in. I don't necessarily think it was the greatest judgment in the world, but it certainly was a courageous move, I guess. But has he developed any real skills that you were worried about?
Not particularly. I know what 2-year guys are like. He's a 2-year fighter. You said his biggest mistake was, trudging across that ring aggressively. I think his biggest mistake was signing that paper to fight me. He fought the wrong one. If he was going to do anything, show anything off, he had the wrong guy. I would beat him in all aspects. My striking would be better than his. I plan to work my striking on him and expose him there. But it worked out that I didn't have to show too much to any of my striking from the feet because he made the decision to come in hot. So, I'm sure he's developed certain things, but nothing to hang with a real professional, someone who's been doing this for, practically a decade.
Yeah, and Mickey, I want to jump in here real quick. I had the privilege of getting to interview you a couple times before this fight, and one of the things I knew that you talked about going into it is how you wanted to beat up a superstar, which I really like that line. I thought that was a good tagline for you going into this thing. And did it feel different for you when you had a guy like that, like CM Punk, with that kind of clout, that kind of popularity, when you're making him submit like that? Did it feel different making a guy like that submit than other fighters that you've gone up against?
This is different, man. It was a little different. I wouldn't say in the fight exactly, but in the lead up to the fight, like that day before you're about to fight, you feel a mix of nerves. You're like, I'd say you're about 70% excited and 30% really nervous. Like just the highest excitement and the highest nervousness. I'd say it was about a 90-10 split for me. Excitement to nervousness. I knew it was a good fight. I knew it was going to be on a great big stage. Walking out, seeing 20,000 at the queue, feeling them, hearing them, it was amazing. It was like it was the most fun I ever had. I really fed off the crowd, and I felt great. I'm jonesing to get that high again, man. I can't wait to get back in the cage.
Now, Mickey, there's a big disparity in the payday in this case. It's reported that Punk made $500,000. You're somewhere around 30 to 50 grand. Number one, how does that make you feel? Did that bother you at all going into the fight? And where do you go from here? What kind of an impact is this win going to have on your career going forward? Because clearly you've got a big future in the sport.
Yeah. This win's definitely giving me some exposure. As far as the money goes, I expected that. He's like we said, he's a superstar. He's a big name. He's going to be responsible for the television buys. At this point, no one cares. No one really, except for my friends and family and a few people who saw my first fight, and my friends and family in New Jersey. Not too many people care to see Mickey Gall fight. Now that's going to change. Now that they've seen me fight on a high, on a big stage, that'll hopefully change. But he was the draw. he deserved. I believe he deserved, a lot of money. I think all fighters should get a lot of money, and I'm fine with the fact that he was paid a lot more than me. To be honest, I was hoping he'd miss weight so I could get 20% of his purse.
I heard that comment, by the way, and I saw your interview that you did while you're driving down the road before the fight, and I thought right away this is going to be a good one, and I tuned in, and I'm glad that I did. Let me ask you, if the roles were reversed, okay, and WWE called you, and you had a chance to exploit your UFC exposure and success, which I'm sure you're going to have, coming up in the future, would you make the transition from UFC to WWE, or would you stick with your sport?
I wouldn't rule anything out, man. Yeah, that'd be quite an honor. But, man, my real passion is fighting. My real passion is, getting in there and mixing it up with the best guys in the world, putting my skills to the test against their skills, putting their kill stuff versus my kill stuff, their violence versus my violence. That's what I really love to do, and that's what I'm looking forward to doing. I would never, rule out any a great opportunity like that. But my main focus is absolutely in fighting in the UFC.
Yeah, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, yeah, I just wanted to say, Mickey, you bring up that violence, your violence against their violence. Something I've heard a lot of people ask about Punk is, does he really have that killer instinct? You were in the octagon with him. Did you feel like he had any of that?
He didn't get a chance. He didn't get a chance to show it in that fight. He came out aggressively. He came out and was gonna, throw a punch. But I'll tell you this, man. He's an MMA fighter now. He's an MMA fighter now. He might have got his butt kicked, but he came out there. It's not an easy thing to do to sit in the locker room knowing that there's a guy down the hall who wants to kill you, and then you gotta walk, and you gotta walk in front of all the people who are gonna watch you either kill or get killed. And he did it. He got in the cage. He came out ready to fight. It was a rookie mistake coming in that aggressive, but he's an MMA fighter now. He took his shots, and I think he'll get better from the experience. And I respect it, man.
One last question from me, Mickey, before we let you go, and I'll turn it over to Nick or TJ. But you talk a lot about your kill shot. Paraphrasing a little bit, as a guy who's trained in jiu-jitsu but is also working on your striking and obviously has some confidence there, if you had to pick one kill shot, which would you prefer, a tap out or a knockout?
I don't care, man. Either one. I guess a knock. I've had more tap outs. So I don't know. I guess a knockout would be cool too. I know I'll get some of those in my day. I'm just going in there to dominate every second of every fight and win.
Yeah, and I by the way, Mickey, you're just such a good talker. I'm so happy that if there's a guy that's going to beat the wrestling guy, it's you, because you really are good with your words, Mickey. But you're welcome, Mickey. But you bring up, we brought up earlier, and this will be my last question. I know that we got TJ, our producer here, and he's the most educated, or more educated than I am. Maybe not Eric, but I don't know. But I wanted to know, knowing that Punk brought as many eyeballs to the table as he did, or the screen, because they sold hundreds of thousands of more pay-per-view buys, it sounds like, for this fight than they expected. Knowing what Dana said about maybe Punk's next fight shouldn't be in the UFC, I mean, would you put him out there again? Do you think that Punk, just for the sheer fact of the fact that he has the ability to draw eyeballs and make money, should get another fight?
You're breaking up a little, bro.
I was just asking, Mickey, like, because of the Punk's ability to bring the eyeballs and sell pay-per-view buys, even though he didn't have a good debut, do you think that he should be put out there for another fight?
In the UFC?
In the UFC.
That's not really up to me. I'm not really concerned anymore. I'm kind of with him. I'm done with that chapter. Hey, man, obviously it was a good business move. Like you said, it brought a lot of eyes and definitely helped out my career. I think he definitely will want to fight again, at least from what he's saying, from the read I get on the guy, is he's determined and he's going to want some sort of retribution. I don't know if the UFC will put him on again. I know he has a continuing contract with them, but I don't really know, man. Anything I'd be saying would be a total guess.
All right, well, I guess we're going to wrap it there. And, Mickey, I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts, final words for all the pro wrestling fans out there that you brought to the table to enjoy this fight?
Well, hi guys. I'm Mickey Gall, and I, punch people in the face and choke them, and come, check out some MMA. If you guys dig the violence, you dig the action. As the UFC says, man, this is as real as it gets. So I hope you guys enjoy.
Hey, Mickey, thank you very much for joining us, man. It's been a real pleasure. I enjoyed the hell out of your fight, and I really look forward to watching you in the future.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to talk to you.
There was Mickey Gall, Eric Bischoff. Man, Eric, big get this week. Big surprise for people out there.
That's all on you, Nick, man. You were able to put that together, and I appreciate it very much. Great job.
No problem. I also brokered the deal to bring Lex to Nitro too. For those of you that are wondering, no. I was a child. No, that was very cool. I'm glad it could work out. Obviously, I used to co-host Bret Hart's podcast, and we had Mickey on before the fight. So I would actually encourage people to, if you enjoyed that, go listen to that as well. You can put them back to back. Hear a couple of legends like Bret and Eric talking to Mickey Gall, arguably one of the fastest rising superstars in all of the UFC. But before we get to the main event of the show today, of course, we already had Mickey. We still have Hulk Hogan to go. But Eric, I would be remiss if we didn't get your thoughts on a couple topics here from the business of professional wrestling. And I wanted to start off with AJ Styles' big WWE World Title win at Backlash. I know he's someone you're very passionate about. What are your thoughts about the win and how he went about winning that title?
I think it was great. I think it was great. Look, a win is a win. AJ's now in a position that he should be in, and I'm just really glad to see that the commitment was made. They doubled down on AJ and went all the way with him, and it couldn't happen to a better person and to a guy who I know is going to take that opportunity and make it bigger than everybody really expected it to be. So hats off to the WWE, to everybody who was involved in the creative side of it, but more importantly, hats off to AJ Styles for being so committed to a career that he's worked so hard at, put up with so much crap, and he's come up the right way. And he's a real human being. He's a good guy, and he deserves what he's experiencing.
Well, and also, of course, coming out of Backlash, something a bit controversial. Randy Orton had to be pulled from Backlash due to, it sounds like stemming from a medical issue, possibly concussion-related from that finish at SummerSlam with Brock Lesnar. But even with that medical issue, they still brought him out there to deliver that RKO to Bray Wyatt at the end of his match with Kane. Eric, I know you've got thoughts. I remember talking to you about what happened to Orton at SummerSlam, and you said you'd be, surprised if there wasn't an issue like this.
Well, I would be. I mean, he got his head pounded by a beast. So yeah, it would be shocking if there wasn't a concussion issue. But look, what they brought him out there in a relatively safe move. It was a very controlled environment. Everybody knew exactly what they were doing. These guys are professionals, and Randy Orton laying an RKO on somebody is probably no more of an impactful move than me flopping down on a couch and watching TV. So to me, it wasn't that controversial. Now, if he would have been involved in something more physical where he was taking blows to the heads, I'd have a lot different of opinion about it. But look, it is what it is. It's unfortunate, but to me, it seemed appropriate, and I didn't see anything wrong with what they did with Randy.
All right, there it is, guys. Hey, not much time for the business this week, as of course we just had that big Mickey Gall interview, and it is time for the main event with Hulk Hogan. But stick around after the credits here. After that Hogan interview, we're going to have a couple minutes at the end of the show to answer a few questions from you all out there who use the hashtag Bischoff on Wrestling over on Twitter. Again, hashtag Bischoff on Wrestling if you want to submit a question here for the show. But without further ado, here it is, the third and final installment of Eric Bischoff's interview with the immortal Hulk Hogan.
Welcome back. One more edition with none other than Hulk Hogan, and I've got to say this is a special one for me. I've only done a handful of episodes. It's not like I've got hundreds of these things under my belt, and I'm still learning as I go and trying to get a little bit more comfortable each week. But Hulk, sir, having you on here, I don't know, it's going to be tough to beat this one because as far as a superstar goes, there's nobody bigger in the industry. As far as a friend goes, a brother, someone that I'm close to and love deeply. This is a good one, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, let me tell you something. I would have never been able to do what I've done or, made the history that has been made if it wasn't for the rest of the boys that were supporting me and making me look good. It sure didn't happen because of talent or me doing it on my own. It took everybody in the wrestling business getting behind this Hulk Hogan movement, and every single guy, every single promoter that I worked for and learned from. I'm grateful for all the knowledge and the people that helped me, because it wasn't a one-man show. It took a lot to get Hulk Hogan where he needed to be, and I'll never look past the fact that from the boys putting me over to support me and, you know, making the decision to be on Team Hogan, you know, it really was a lot of people. It wasn't me at all. So, you know, I appreciate everything, and we'll never forget it, that's for sure.
Yeah. I know how grateful for you, for all of that you are. We do talk on a personal level about that fairly often. But what do you miss most about being in the ring at this day, right now?
Being in the ring?
Yeah. What do you miss the most? What aspect of that do you miss the most?
That's an easy answer. I mean, that is the only place that I ever felt free. You know, when I was in the ring, people call it in the moment. People call it being aware, all the spiritual stuff people attach to being in the moment and being perfectly happy and perfectly content. For me, that was in the ring. Because when I was in the ring, I didn't have to worry about the kids. I didn't have to worry about, you know, the ex-wife. I didn't have to worry about all the chatter of, you know, the politics, or why is Hulk Hogan on top, or, you know, just all the gaga, as Pat Patterson would say, you know, all the drama that went along with everybody taking shots at me, or people patting me on the back, or people being friends, or people not being friends. There was so much drama that went, because at the time, you know, when I first got to this position, there was no Stone Cold, there was no Rock, there was no Triple H, there was no Undertaker. I was the only guy. So when you're the only guy, which it's not that way anymore, there's not just one guy anymore. When you're the only guy, when you're the only attraction, you know, people throw a lot of stones at you. And the only time, and it's just political stuff, it wasn't no big deal. It was the cost of doing business. It came with the territory. The only time I was ever totally at peace was when I'd get in that ring. And I don't know if you remember when I'd be going to the ring when I was working for you, or when I'd be going to the ring working for Vince. On my way to the ring, I'd say, how much time do I have? And they'd say, well, you got 10, or you got 15, or you got 20. And my question was, can I get more? I always wanted to get more time out there, because I knew the longer I stayed out there, the longer I'd be in that dream zone, that peaceful zone that I loved. You know, that's the only time I ever really felt like myself, was when I was in that ring, and that's what I missed the most, just being in that darn ring.
You have been, and you talked about it last week, you know, you've been through a lot. We don't need to drag, you know, anybody through it. We all know. Everybody that's listening to this podcast is well aware of what you've been through, and in some respects, still, you know, neck deep in litigation, which makes it hard to talk about a lot of things. But from my perspective, as a friend of yours, you feel to me, and you have now for some time, to have almost that same, maybe the same level of peace, but in a different way now. Is it me, or are you finally getting to that point where you can find those moments that you used to only get in the ring, but now you can find that peace outside of it?
Well, I mean, it's a practice. You know, it's something you have to work on every day, just like a gymnast works on their technique and, you know, all the stuff they do on the balance beam or whatever they do. You know, for me, it's a constant practice. And one of the main things was pulling myself out of the mix, because there's like two people in my head. And whenever I say I am so tired of myself, that's two people. I am tired of myself. And at the end of the day, as soon as I realized that all the chatter and all the craziness and everybody's opinions and people saying I'm this, I'm that, none of that matters. The only thing that mattered was the truth. And at the end of the day, all the stuff that's happened to me, it's kind of like it didn't really happen to me. It happened for me. It happened for me to get me on track, to straighten me up, to put me in the direction that I was, you know, meant to be going down. And at this point in my life, I'm pretty much Teflon, you know. I've had the luxury of the name being so powerful, and this is just a luxury that I lucked into because of a lot of people working hard to make Hulk Hogan what Hulk Hogan was. I've had the luxury of the name being so powerful that you really couldn't destroy the man completely, and it's given me a lot of time to breathe and regroup and soul search to go, okay, why is this going on? Why is this happening to me? Why again? Why did something even worse happen? And it really wasn't happening to me. Like I said, it was happening for me to make me a better person, to get me on track, to make me, be who I am today. So you're right. There's a whole level of peace that I got now, and it's been hard to find without the wrestling business. Believe me, there's been a lot of days where I soul searched and wondered, what am I going to do next, or how am I going to regroup? But it took a while, but I get it. I've been hit in the head with a 2x4 several times. I guess I had to be hit a lot harder than most people, but I get it now, and there is that level and that feeling of peace that if I did have a chance to get plugged back into the wrestling business, I really think I could contribute on a major level now.
When you talk about kind of the distractions that are part of the business, whether it's the politics, it's the backstage pulling and pushing and people trying to keep you a little bit off balance, because if Hulk Hogan's a little off balance, then wrestler over here may be able to get a little better footing. And by the way, T, on my show, because I get to say it's my show, I'm like trying really hard, and I'm committed. Let's put it that way. It's not that big of an effort on my part, but whenever I talk about something negative, I usually don't associate a name to it. This is not about digging up old war stories and peeling scabs off wounds and crap like that.
Right.
So I'm gonna kind of paint the picture here without naming names, because I just don't want to do that. But I remember, it was about 6 months or a year after I started working with you, because it took me that long to kind of figure things out and get a real feel, because everything happened fast. It was just bang, bam, boom. It's, ticker tape parades at Disney World, and then this, and then that, and then Baywatch, part of our pay-per-view. I mean, there's so many things happened so quickly. Aside just from the business side of things that had nothing to do with what we saw on camera, all of that was happening just as rapidly. But I remember at one point, kind of step back. I wasn't really talking, with you at that moment, but I was watching you, and I was thinking this, and I've said this to you in our personal relationship almost recently, but you reminded me of this big giant apple tree that was loaded with big juicy red apples that would fall off that tree at any moment. They were so ripe. And you were surrounded by a bunch of people who will remain unnamed. And I would just watch them shake that tree, because then there was an opportunity that there'd be an apple in it for them. And even though this really is a question, but I would imagine being in the ring and becoming into that moment, or just feeling free inside of the ring for all the right reasons. I bet you a lot of that had to do with just the sheer chaos and people trying to take away from you. Did you feel that? Or was that just something that I thought I observed?
No, it was for real. I mean, it was happening. But at the time, I was trying to take care of as many people as I could, because I thought there was, a true loyalty, a true friendship, and just all the, ego-driven stuff that doesn't matter, like hanging out with some guy for 25 years and buying him every meal and paying for every check and every hotel room and making sure he had a job and stuff like that. I never dreamed that when the table flipped the other way, there'd be no reciprocation, or that guy wouldn't be by my side, or that guy wouldn't stand toe-to-toe with me. I got a huge wake-up call, because when that low-hanging fruit wasn't there anymore, people disappeared like I had the plague. And I could look at my left hand here, and I got more fingers on my left hand than I need to count the people that actually stuck with me through all the tough stuff, through everything from, the divorce, from my son getting in trouble, from, the sex tape, from the racial stuff. I mean, there were very few people that actually stuck with me through all that stuff. And, some of the most disappointing things to me were the people that I thought I had bonded with with over the last 25 or 30 years, and I thought it was reciprocal both ways, if that's the word. But man, they just disappeared like the plague, and they turned on me, and just all this social media stuff. They turned to social media and got very adversarial. So it was a huge wake-up call for me to realize how the truth and what real friendship really means. And I've learned a huge lesson by everything I've been through, and I've got a better understanding of how things work than I ever did now.
Do you get to watch much wrestling anymore? I know Jennifer's not a wrestling fan, so it might be a little bit challenging from time to time. But do you get to watch much?
Well, I record Monday Night Raw every week, and sometimes on Mondays we'll go to a movie because we really don't go out on the weekends because there's so much chaos here on the beach. And like we went out to a restaurant last night, and it was cool because I only had to sign like 7 or 8 autographs. And usually if we go out on a Saturday night or Friday, it's 70 or 80. And not that I try to avoid it, but we just got a schedule now where on the weekends we hang out at the beach and stuff, and then we kind of like go out. But it's still rolling. What was the question? I forget what you asked me.
No, I was curious as to how much wrestling you get a chance to watch.
Like I was saying, Monday nights I kind of record it, and then I'll either come in, late Monday night if we're watching something different or stuff like that, and I'll pick my spot where I can sit down and watch it and really get a good general read on how the show played out and what the theme was, and then I'll go back and I'll microscope and watch things really close that I like. But, the only wrestling I really get to watch is Monday Night Raw every week.
I got to tell you this. I don't want to make you feel bad by saying this, but I recently, within the last year or so, started doing, more independent stuff. And at first I was a little reluctant because I've never been known as an independent wrestling kind of guy. I'm not Colt Cabana or anything like that, or, I didn't come up through that system. I was kind of like the big box Walmart kind of wrestling personality, I guess, at least at the end of my career. But I got to tell you, going to the indie shows, it kind of it's a little bit like going back and watching The Lone Ranger. It reminds you why you got into wrestling in the first place. There's an energy and a vibe there, and I'd like to talk to you about your opinion of the indie scene as best you know it, and the style that we see coming out of there so often. But I got to tell you, if you ever get a chance, again, like we said a couple of weeks ago, it's not like you're going to sneak in the building, but there's some really good stuff going on out there, and it does remind me of the old territory system back in the day.
Well, that's the heartbeat of where they're going with all this stuff. I mean, if you look back at what's going on now, I mean, even the TNA talent, and a lot of that TNA talent came up through the independent ranks, and it's kind of like the heartbeat of where this business needs to keep focused, this independent stuff, because that's where the different stuff comes from. The Performance Center is great for developing and branding, but all of a sudden you're going to get some outlaw that came out of some backyard wrestling or some independent organization that's going to set the world on fire. And that's kind of like the heartbeat for this whole thing. And, the situation is with the more programming and the more hours of TV that WWE's shooting, they've kind of like opened the doors up for a lot of great talent that actually is coming up from TNA. When I saw him sign Eric Young, and like we were talking about AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Austin Aries, I mean, now we're going to get some real play. Now the game's going to change, and I think the more people look and focus towards the independent scene, that's going to change the game even more, because there's some really, really, really good talent out there that unless somebody reaches out and grabs them, they'll be out there forever, and no one will ever find out.
Yeah, I mean, the names you mentioned that were formerly with TNA, AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, Bobby Roode needs to be on that list as well.
Yeah, of course, Bobby Roode, he's amazing.
Eric Young, these guys, and I remember a conversation I had with Chris Jericho, and I'm going to get to that with you in just a moment, because it's a question I wanted to ask you. But when the aforementioned group get an opportunity to get that final polish, because that's one thing the WWE does really, really well, is they put that final polish on a character and on a performance. I see a lot of potential in everybody that you mentioned, and AJ's living proof. I mean, he's he's an anomaly. He's an exception to the rule to be able to go from the independent scene, which is regardless of whether it was Ring of Honor or TNA, it's essentially the independent scene. To go from that style of wrestling to be able to be on the main stage with John Cena in the WWE, I think that was a phenomenal leap for him. But there's a lot of talent that's waiting there in the wings that are going to have that opportunity. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And, we call it Titan training, But the weirdest thing is, it's like when my daughter used to sing, and when she was doing shows all the time, if she sang in front of 300 people, there was a labor of love there. And then all of a sudden, when she got in front of 3,000 people, or Daytona in front of 100,000 people at the Raceway, it gets easier the more people you get to perform in front of, such as guys that go from the independent scene and end up in the WWE. Of course, it's more taxing with how much you have to wrestle and how much you have to be on as far as TV appearances and other stuff that they have doing outside the wrestling ring. But at the end of the day, with that big machine up there and the production and the buildings being sold out, it actually gets easier. And while AJ is getting his Titan training, so-called, right now, he's really going to be able to relax. And I know, when you're on TV and you're in the main event and you're in the main event of the pay-per-view, there's a certain amount of, okay, I got to have my act together, I got to perform, there's a certain amount of tension. But that also comes with being able to relax a lot more, and you perform better when everything's already done for you. The lighting, the entrance, the building's all already sold out. You already know it's going to be there. When you get to the ring, you don't have to dig for 10 minutes to get things right, because when the bell rings, it's already there. There's already heat. People know the storyline. It's already been embedded in the audience, so it makes things so much easier. So I really feel if these independent guys can get a hand up and get to the WWE, as good as a lot of these independent guys are, you're going to see a lot of stars coming out of the independent circuit, and it just gets easier once you get out there. Like AJ, Eric Young, for instance. This guy is talented beyond belief. James Storm, all these guys that have been just in a holding pattern. If you could take James Storm or Eric Young, and Vince could plug him in, whether James Storm did the cowboy gimmick, or whether they just let Eric Young get his ass beat, and then when he rips his pants off and he makes a comeback in his Speedos, the place would explode. They're so talented already with just a little polish and that Titan training that you're talking about. There's a whole new crop of superstars that come from that genre that started with the independents.
I talked to Chris Jericho. This might have been about a year or so ago. He actually moderated a debate between Bruce Pritchard and I, talking about Bruce's perspective of the Monday Night Wars, and in my perspective, because we were both on obviously opposite sides of that period of time. But one of the things that Chris told me, and I think it was even after the show was over, is that, when Chris left WCW, he and I were, our relationship was stretched pretty thin, to put it mildly. But I didn't want to see him go. I tried from a financial perspective to do everything I could to get him to stay. But Chris made the right decision in leaving. But, Chris told me, and I don't mean to, I'm paraphrasing, these were not Chris's exact words, but in essence, he said, when I left WCW, I thought for sure I was ready for the main event in WWE. Until I got to WWE, and then he realized how much more he had to learn. I know it was a different situation a long time ago, but when you first started working with Vince Sr., did you have to go through that same kind of process, that learning curve there?
You know what was so good for me? And it was a big man's territory back then, and I was always over 300 pounds. I had trained for so long, I had the look. What was so good for me was the education I had watching Florida Championship Wrestling. And we're going to go back to what we talked about last week or the week before. When I saw Eddie Graham's finishes and how good they were and how it was embedded in my head just from as a wrestling fan, what to expect psychology-wise, when I went up, to the WWE and they said, just drop the big leg, that's your finish. It was so easy for me, because I already had the look, I had a pretty good idea of the cadence with the rap, and it was kind of like what I had kind of figured out on my own, kind of like plugged in real well up there. So I didn't really have to go through that big learning curve because I was taught by watching, and it was an unconscious thing. I was taught to think on a main event level. And it's real hard if you haven't worked main events or thought that way to teach someone. Let's just say if you're a mid-card guy, it's real hard to teach somebody how to think like a main eventer, or teach them their style, or be their coach, or, you know, break them in the business when, you know. But I was taught, you know, from day one, and I didn't even realize I was being taught to think on that main event level, because that's how Eddie Graham thought. So I really didn't go through it the way Chris talked about it, but I totally understand it, because I saw a lot of guys go through what he went through.
Wow. Who's the most fun? Who's the favorite celebrity you've ever worked in the ring with?
Celebrity?
Yeah.
You know, it became
non-wrestling celebrity, but, you know, from outside of wrestling, but a celebrity.
Well, it became the most fun was that dirty dog Dennis Rodman, because my thing was to feel things, you know, and just not to really talk through things too much, but to not put a stock match out there, but actually to listen to the crowd and actually do what the crowd wanted me to do, instead of just planning all this crap in the back, which didn't mean anything. And Dennis didn't mean to do that, because Dennis didn't really care, or he was drinking, or he was lazy, or whatever his problem was, or he had an attitude. But that attitude put him in a position that when it was time for him to perform, it was all instinct. And I really enjoyed watching him come into his own, because most of the time I'd be standing on the ring apron when he'd have to figure it out on his own in the ring. And I just love watching that kind of crap go down, where he doesn't know what to expect, but instinct-wise, he knew what to do. And I really enjoyed working with him, because even if you tried to tell him what to do, he wouldn't even pay attention before he got out there. Other guys like Jay Leno, he did exactly what Diamond Dallas Page taught him to do. Nothing changed. You know, Karl Malone did exactly what Diamond Dallas Page taught him to do. Nothing changed. But with Rodman, he wasn't even listening to you before the match. And then when he got in there, he was going, oh, shit, now I got to get serious. And he was really good at what he did when he got in there. So he was the most fun.
He was it still is, amazing athlete. I mean, really, can you imagine if he would ever have put his mind into wrestling? And not that his NBA career sucked, by the way, but if, you know, through the stroke of good fortune or what, he ended up in professional wrestling, because he was really gifted.
Well, I think one of the things, and I totally agree with you, but one of the things that really, really caught me off guard was when we did Celebrity Championship Wrestling, and Dennis started showing up early, and which was totally uncharacteristic of Dennis. He started showing up early because he really cared, and when we were done, during the show, and even when we were done, he wanted to talk. I was amazed, and I don't mean this disrespectfully at all, because I didn't know, but I became aware of how smart this guy was. I mean, this guy, when he's not drinking and he's straight, he is so smart. It reminded me, and I'm not trying to relate, you know, or compare the two, but if you don't know Scott Hall, you know, you think, oh, Scott Hall, you know, he partied. But if you know Scott Hall, you know how smart Scott is. That's what I found out Dennis had in him. I didn't realize how smart Dennis Rodman really was till I sat down when he was straight and he started talking theory and what he thought we should do. And, oh, my God, this guy actually understands. He's really sharp.
And he's, you know, that's the thing you talk about. And I want to get back to Scott Hall, because he's such an interesting cat, and he's a good friend, and we stay in touch. And I'm very, very proud of him. Not for everything he's done in wrestling. I'm proud for him for that, but I'm proud of him for what he's done, along with DDP's help. But Dennis Rodman, you know, and it took me a couple of years, because I worked with him, you know, the first time back in whatever it was, 98, when you did, and got to know him a little bit. And he was always friendly, but he was distant and remote. And if you don't get a chance to know someone, it comes off as arrogant or conceited or whatever people think automatically. But Dennis is first of all, he's very shy, which people wouldn't know by virtue of the fact that he got his picture taken in a wedding dress with Madonna or whatever the hell it was. But he is very, very shy guy. And I don't want to say insecure isn't the right word, but he's been
no, insecure is the right word. Insecure
is the right
word.
But it's not without cause. His life has not been an easy life, and he's been burned by a lot of people around him. So he tends to just be off by himself. But once he gets comfortable with you, I've been there, man. You can have a conversation with him, and you think, who the hell just took over Dennis Rodman's body? Because this is some heavy stuff. He's a brilliant guy.
Yeah, I mean, working with Darren Prince, and Prince is, for those that don't know, he's a sports agent that helps me and Eric and Magic Johnson and Rodman and several athletes, Joe Frazier before he passed away, Mike Tyson, and I get to know Darren. I get to know Rodman real well through Darren, and it's just amazing because, I never know when to expect it, but all of a sudden there'll be a call coming from Southern California or from South Miami. It'll be Darren D-Rod calling up just to talk, and it's just fun to talk to him. I have the most amazing conversations with him because, he'll just call up, see how I'm doing, and we'll end up talking for a couple darn hours. It's pretty amazing, but he's a good guy, man. He's got a great heart. I mean, that's a lot of people don't realize what a good heart Dennis has.
No, he does. He's another one of those big old apple trees, if you know what I mean.
And the funny thing was, between Mike Tyson and a lot of our friends, Foreman and Rodman, they really stuck up for me when this whole racial thing came out. So I told Dennis, you don't have to do that. And Dennis said, I'm just telling the truth because I know you better than anybody. So, I mean, he was even in the trenches fighting for me, which showed me a lot, and Dennis didn't have to do that, so he's an amazing person.
He is. Hey, do you get a chance to stay in touch with Ric Flair?
Rick and I talk maybe every couple months, and it's usually, based around appearances. When he finds out we're going to be somewhere together or something, I'll usually get a call a week before or something, and we don't get to talk that much, but we do stay in touch.
Right. I saw him about a month ago in Montreal. He and Wendy / Fifi, who I worked with back in WCW, we had a chance to have dinner 3 or 4 nights in a row because we were all at the same event, and Rick's booth was right next to mine in Montreal, and got to spend a lot of time with him. And he really loves you, man. Rick is a great guy.
Oh yeah, we've been on the same page for quite a long time. We always talk about that WrestleMania that never was, and no one's ever, we've all speculated on why they pulled us apart and why Vince and the WWF did what they did. But I'm telling you, man, we were on track to making some really big history with that WrestleMania with me and Flair because, man, I was all for doing the job and getting him up and running. And, man, I could have chased him forever if I'd have done the job the right way at that WrestleMania, but we never had the chance. And we were just doing crazy business before WrestleMania. I mean, Chicago, Milwaukee, everywhere we went was just insane. And I saw a dollar mark on his back for the next couple of years, and we just never got there. But he's been a great friend, and I've tried to be very supportive through all the stuff he's been through, and he's reciprocated, man. He's been with me all the way, and I think we've bonded in a way, that it'll never change now.
Right. Well, listen, Hulk, it's time to wrap it up. I could talk to you all evening, but maybe we'll do this again down the road. And
yeah, we haven't even touched the surface, brother. I mean, we gotta continue. We need just like Sheamus is doing the best of 7 now. We need to do the best of 7 of these things or whatever. We need to do 7 of them. But there's a lot more to talk about here. We haven't really even dug in yet.
Well, let's do it. Maybe every other week or once a month we can have a special, and we can also talk about what's currently going on, so we can, take a step back into history, but also put our toe in the water in terms of what's going on right now. Hulk, I can't thank you enough, man. And
also there's that whole outside the box stuff, all this legal stuff that I can't talk about now. There's going to be a time where I'm going to be able to talk about it, and I'd love to use your vehicle to really let everybody know what I was thinking and what happened from my perspective. So I think there's a lot of real interesting stuff that won't be wrestling related that people might want to know about what I'm thinking or what I've been through. It might be really interesting.
All right, my brother. You have a good evening. Give hugs to Jen for me, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, I'm going to go out and have a beer with Garrett this week.
You dog. Have one for me, too. I love you, man.
All right, love you, too. Bye-bye.
The final installment in the books there with Hulk Hogan. Eric, what a What a big week for the show. Mickey Gall and part 3 with Hogan, all in one compact podcast here for the listeners out there.
Yeah, we're trying to we're trying to bring the listeners something different every week, and I really appreciate the effort that you put into getting Mickey Gall on the show. It added a lot. It's newsworthy, and I appreciate it very much, Nick. And of course, having Hulk Hogan on the show, a dear friend. And it's great to have a conversation with Hulk and I told him this the other day, I think right after part 2, that, it was really fun for me to have a conversation with him where we're not really pitching something or trying to present something. We're just having a conversation about wrestling, and he was honest, he was candid, and I really appreciated it.
Yeah, and I got to ask you real quickly here before we get to the questions from the fans. I don't know if you've heard about this or noticed this at all, but the WWE has put Hulk's voice back into their WWE Network commercial spots. Did you hear about this? I don't know if you got wind of this at all.
No, I didn't, but I'm not surprised. Look, when the WWE produced the DVD on me, the documentary where they came out to my home last summer, Hulk was a big part of that documentary. So the fact that he was in the documentary suggested to me that they were probably going to, over time, reintegrate Hulk back into the WWE content. So I'm not surprised. I'm happy because I think the fans really want to see that. I don't think the fans are nearly as sensitive to some of the obvious issues as perhaps the business side of, the equation is. But look, there's a saying, time heals all wounds, and I believe it will.
Yeah, and WrestleMania 33 is in Florida, and if there were ever a place for Hulk, well, anyway, I don't want to lead to speculation. You all know where I'm putting the pieces out there. Big Bill Goldberg news, and I was so excited to see the news that you and Bill are going to be on stage at the Old National Center September 25th, Indianapolis, Indiana, on the eve, or not on the eve, I guess the afternoon before Clash of the Champions. WWE is presenting that night, and such a cool tie-in. I mean, obviously, with you, former president of WCW, Clash of the Champions, I mean, that was at one time, that was your show, Eric.
Yeah, that was a big deal. Of course, Clash of the Champions started, long before I got to WCW, but we kind of took it like we tried to do everything else to the next level, and it really became, the platform that people really identify with, when it comes to WCW and big events. So I'm proud to sit and talk to Bill Goldberg. I haven't talked to Bill in a long time, and Bill and I have a very we have a colorful history. It's been great. I love Bill Goldberg. We get along fine, but Bill's a volatile, intense guy. I've been known to have a moment or two of volatility myself and intensity. So I think Bill and I together, we're going to cover some ground. It should be really interesting. We're going to be doing our podcast from that event, so it'll be a chance for fans to really participate in the podcast as opposed to only being able to be part of the show in terms of the mailbag. They'll literally be able to be on the podcast with us, ask questions of Bill, certainly myself, and really be a part of Bischoff on Wrestling. So I think it's a great opportunity. I want to thank everybody involved for putting it together. Mark Out Moments on Twitter. Check them out. You guys, it's a lot of great stuff going on at Mark Out Moments. So this is just one event of what I think is going to be a great series of events for Mark Out Moments.
All right. Well, hashtag Bischoff on Wrestling. That is the thing here at hand. That's how we're going to wrap up the show. I got a few questions here for you, Eric, and the first one comes from @Aunt Maurizio, and this is a political question, as you are quite political over on Twitter, Eric. He wants to know, what are your thoughts on Ted Cruz's non-endorsement of Donald Trump?
I didn't really like it. I understand it. Look, Donald Trump was not my choice in the primaries. I'll be candid about that. However, once he came out on top, I'm going to support him. I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote the Republican ticket because I do believe that, a President Donald Trump under any circumstances is a far better choice for this country than Hillary Clinton. And I guess if I was in Ted Cruz's shoes, I might feel differently because of the things that Trump said, and the things that Trump accused, Ted's father of. I mean, it was pretty over the top stuff. So I understand. And of course, he kind of took some pretty stiff shots at Ted Cruz's wife. I get it. But there's a time when you just got to put the past in the past, and business is business, and you just let it go, and you do what's best for everybody. And I would have liked to have seen that out of Ted Cruz.
This next question here comes from @Money, a.k.a. Monaco. He wants to know, Eric, Who was your favorite mid-card competitor in WCW, and if you had a second chance, would you push them as a main eventer?
I would say Ernest the Cat Miller. And part of that is, it's tainted a little bit because we're pretty good friends. And I was the one that actually talked me into coming into the wrestling business. Ernest was in the NFL. He was and still is a very successful martial artist, and believe it or not, still competes at his age. It is very freaking good. But I just dug his character, man. He's so much charisma, and he learned so quickly that it's not that I wish I would have pushed him harder because he was so new in the business. You want to be careful not to push someone too far, too fast. But if we would have had another year or 18 months under our belt, I believe Cat could have easily been on top.
All right, last question here from @FirstClassBob. He wants to know, Eric, why don't you follow Nick on Twitter? Why don't you follow me, Eric? Why don't you follow @WZRebel on Twitter? I follow you. Your son Garrett, he follows me on Twitter. Why are you not following me on Twitter, Eric?
That's a good question, and I don't have a good answer. But I will say, if you looked at my Twitter feed, and you can go on my Twitter and check it out. You can see who I follow. It's primarily news. Very little with respect to professional wrestling or sports entertainment. And my feed is so clogged with news and political information that even if I followed you, I probably wouldn't see your posts. So I apologize. Don't take it personally. At some point, I'll go in and clean up my feed a little bit and delete some of the people that I don't really follow as much as I thought I would. And I'll add you. Honestly, I will.
You would be surprised how often that question has come up in my Twitter feed, and so now it's been asked out loud. Everyone, there's the answer, and it's kind of like is Ted Cruz the Zodiac Killer? It's just a question that needed to be asked out loud. All right, well, Eric, hey, thank you for a great show this week. Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, Mickey Gall, all in the same place, baby. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you, man. It's been a real pleasure. TJ, thanks for making a great show, and we will look forward to talking to you guys next week.
It's Sam Adams. We're constantly improving who we are, what we do, and how we brew. We may craft over 60 styles of beer, but it's Boston Lager that has captured the heart of America since 1984. With its deep amber color, caramel notes, and signature hop character, what better to have in your pint glass? Sam Adams Boston Lager. Pursue better.
Boston Beer Company, Boston, Mass. Save responsibly.